But this is Todd and Brandon with Make Sales Great Again. Today we have Miss Sarah Soliman in the house on Soliman Production. What's up, Sarah?
I'm doing well. How are you guys? I'm so excited. Usually I'm on your side and I'm interviewing people, so this is a little bit of a
but we begged you to do this, so now that you're here with us.
They did actually beg me. Did you hear that?
Brandon was on his knees. Yeah. It's not the first time. A whole different scenario. Anyways, what we should do. But the truth is,
too early in this conversation.
It's not too early.
Coming out with the
Brandon,
heaters.
You know?
I love it.
A lot of heaters today. But anyways, you own Soliman Productions. Obviously, you know, you've done news, you've done all sorts of stuff, and like you have this amazing company that we have the luxury to be a part of. We have recently become one of your clients for the past few months. We did a lot of our social media and our content with another company at the time, and we have transitioned over to Soliman. And I have to tell you that I am 100% glad that we did, because you guys have given us vision, and your team is amazing. You know, you just have so many good moving parts to your business, but all this doesn't get created like overnight, right? And I know it was years and years of you kind of building this and your brand. Tell us how you kind of got into all this, because I know this wasn't like owning your own production studio. It wasn't like the whole dream at once, was it?
No, and you know what's interesting? I actually never thought of owning a business, period. So my trajectory was very, you know, the standard, right? I went to college. I went to UCF for broadcast journalism. Go Knights. I wanted to, you know, work in news and just be kind of like a news anchor, a news reporter. And that was my route. And I dabbled in that for a little bit. And then I was like, oh, wow, I actually really don't want to be in news anymore. So I got out of that fairly quickly. I worked in radio for a little bit, which I absolutely loved. Radio was so much fun. You're going to so many different events and meeting so many awesome people in your community. And I made lifelong friends in both news and in radio. But then in reflecting on radio, I'm like, okay, even with that, I don't know that there is a true future in radio, right? Like just with how media is moving. So I decided to step down from radio. And then I worked for a production company for a couple of years. They were a startup. And that's when I really started to think like, maybe this is something that I could do for myself, because there was a lot of things with the leaders of that business that I just wasn't jiving with. Like they weren't people-centric, you know, their employees weren't really important to them. They were more like numbers, and it just didn't feel good. And I thought to myself, and I'll never forget this, I called my dad, who's also a business owner, and I said, you know what, Dad, I don't want to work for someone anymore. I think I'm just going to take a stab and start my own business. And he's like, go for it. So my parents were super, super supportive, and I thought to myself, what's the worst that can happen, right? Like I start a business, if it doesn't go anywhere, corporate America is always there. I've got great relationships. I'm sure I can get a job anywhere, you know, that I apply myself to. And that's kind of how Soliman Productions was born. It was out of uncomfortability versus me being like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to start a business. I had no idea what the hell I was in for. And it'll be 10 years next year. Wow. So it's super cool. Sometimes, like, you know how it is. You're moving so fast and you don't get an opportunity to stop and reflect on what you've been able to do and build. I mean, even just like sitting here in this building, sometimes I'm like, oh, okay. Like this is not pretend. Like I have overhead and a lot of shit to worry about. Yeah. And it's just, it was never something like if you would ask me when I was in high school or whatever, that I would have said, oh, I'm going to own a business one day. So my story is a little bit different when it comes to entrepreneurship. Yeah.
That's really cool. So like, what was it like? Did you quit the job that you had and to go start the business? Did you have to keep working while you started to make money? Did you just go fresh into opening your own business and figuring the hell out, or what?
Yeah. So what I did was I started to kind of build a little bit of a portfolio. You know, like I would do shoots for free. And actually Orlando, who...
Wait a second. Wait. Did she say free?
Yeah, this was back in the day, gentlemen. Calm down.
We don't know shoots for free. That's insanity.
Yeah, back in the day, I did what I needed to do. So I actually like reached out to my hairstylist at the time, and I'm like, hey, does your salon need a video? Because I'm starting my own company. And then I was doing trivia. I was hosting trivia nights at 2 different places in Orlando.
The world's worst trivia guy ever, by the way.
You are?
The worst.
Well, you know what's funny? I'm actually really bad at trivia as well, but I can host the hell out of it.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, you're either one or the other.
I just get my wife on my team and then I'll continue to win.
Then you'll be fine.
Yeah. So you're bad too. Love that.
Yeah. So actually in Orlando, who has been with me from like the very beginning, I would tell him, hey, oh, I've got a trivia gig tonight. Can you just come be like my DJ and keep track of all the scores? And I didn't have money to pay him. So I'm like, I'll pay you in chicken wings and beer. And he's like, sign me up. That's why he's my dude, you know? So from there, my whole intention with that is that I wanted to network and hand out business cards and start meeting people, which is exactly what I did. So yeah, I mean, I didn't really, there wasn't a lot of, I guess, time that I was still employed and then, you know, starting my business. It was maybe like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, I'm out. I was really depressed. And I mean, you guys know me well. I'm a very positive, energetic person. And I just was in such a dark place working for my previous employer that I just felt like I can't do this. Like, I need to get out. So I personally didn't want to stay in that environment any longer than I was already there. And it wasn't about the money for me. It was just like my mental health.
Yeah.
And feeling like I'm a workaholic, as you also know. Mm-hmm. So for me to wake up and not want to go to work, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. And I recognize that in myself, and that's where I was like, okay, I'm out. I got it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's two things that happen. You either, you know, gradually move into what you want to do because you still have to have a job to pay the bills, to keep the lights on, to have a home, while you're trying to build a dream to get into something that you really love and you're passionate about, right? Or it's like you just take the plunge, right? And a lot of people, I think, they can do it, but it's scary.
Yeah.
And as a woman that is as successful as you are, I know you were depressed, which is a big thing, but there's a lot of people that are out there, men or women, that are depressed and in a job which they absolutely hate, and they're just scared to move at all. What advice would you give them? Because I just want to be very real about this. People have bills to pay, and there's all these entrepreneurs out there, and just do it, take the plunge and just jump and, you know, go ahead. And it's not that easy. It's not as easy as people think. And I think that a lot of the advice they're hearing out there is like, jump. And it's like, well, no, I've got 2 kids. I have dance lessons to pay for. I have football, you know, lessons. I've got, you know, to make sure that there's food on the table for my kids, but just jump, go ahead and just drop all that and not worry about anything or my family. So, I mean, what advice do you have people that's practical advice for if they want to get into start their own business that you would give them?
Yeah, it's interesting because I never think that's the jump without a plan is good advice, right? Like, I'm all about taking a leap of faith. That's what I did. But I also recognize that everyone's story is different. For me, I don't have kids. So it was it's literally take care of Sarah. And I happen to be pretty decent with my money. So I save money, and I knew, okay, this is how long I kind of have before I start getting really uncomfortable without a consistent paycheck. So you just have to really analyze you and your story and what your means are. And if you do have responsibilities like children, or you take care of your elderly parents, or whatever your story is, you have to be real with yourself, right? And at the end of the day, you are never stuck anywhere. I think it just depends on how bad you want a shift and a change in your life. So if I'm speaking to people that are, you know, not in my situation where they do have other responsibilities, other people to feed, then my advice to you would be to find another job in the interim that at least it's a shift for your mental health. Because as you get drained at work and you are unhappy, if you take that back home, which you do, it reflects back in your family and your kids. Like, it impacts everything around you, right? So that's not worth it, at least not to me. But there's so many other jobs out there that you can just go and do. And even if it's like below your current salary or whatever that means, if it means your happiness until you are putting a plan together, a intelligent plan, you know, that can get you out of working for someone and into working for yourself, that would be my advice. But to just jump without any kind of action plan, like true tangible things that you are going to, you know, work on accomplishing, I never thought that was the best advice. I'm a very strategic person, and I do things like, for example, some of the things that I did, just to kind of give you some tangibles that I did while I was working for someone, was like I opened a bank account for Soliman Productions. I figured out what I wanted to call my company, right? Soliman Productions. I started my website. Like, I was doing all the things that you eventually have to do anyway, but I was doing it after working hours, on the weekends, during my personal time, to get me there. And then, financially, like I said, I had saved, I'm good at saving my money. So I knew what my limitations were. And if I didn't book a contract in the first like couple months, I knew that, like, okay, maybe I should slow my roll, not give up on my business, but slow my roll, pick up employment somewhere, right? And I'm not too good to work anywhere. Like, I'm not above working anywhere that puts food on my table. So I was okay with that. But I was hustling my tail off to make sure that I was landing contracts and doing all these things. And like I said, I was working around the clock to do the things that I could do while I was working for someone else. So those were my tangibles that I was working towards. And I didn't just jump. Yeah. It might seem that way, but it wasn't that way for me.
That's the interesting, though, thing, because you had said, I'd never really thought about opening a business. And the easier move would have been, well, I like working in this industry, but there's a million other companies that probably have a better environment that I'd like. And you could have very easily, and a lot of people do that, have no interest or really thinking about owning their own business. They're like, well, I'll just leave this company and go to that company.
Yeah.
But something obviously happened in your mind or there where you were like, well, I could go to another company, but instead I want to go do this for yourself, because you took the more difficult route as someone who never thought they'd open a business in the first place.
Totally. And that's a great point. So while I was working for others, and I've been told this my whole life, even when I was a teenager and working like wherever, restaurants and wherever, is I carry a company like it's my own. So the interesting part is that when I was working for my former employer, people thought it was my company, which is a huge compliment, right? Like, I took it as a big compliment. And in that moment, I think as I was getting like that feedback from people that I wasn't asking for, it was just like really kind and observant people that were complimenting me on my work ethic. I took that and I thought to myself, okay, well then if I have an ability to lead and do all these things, like, why don't I just give it a go? And for me, I wanted to create an environment where, there's still structure and there's rules and stuff you have to in any company, but I wanted my team and whoever works with me to feel like kind of a sense of freedom still, right? Like, I tell my team, I'm like, you're creative, like, figure it out. It's okay. I empower you to do this and do that. Like, you guys run with it. Obviously, there's rules and limitations based on clients and whatever that we have to abide by, but I wanted to create an environment for other people that was not what I was in. Like, I don't want people to leave here feeling like depressed, like I don't micromanage. I'm not the type of leader that's like over someone's shoulder and criticizing every little thing that they do. I want people to come into this space and feel like they're themselves, and again, you have to be within our brand, but at the same time, our brand is fairly flexible. We've had all kinds of people work with us. So that was the motivation behind me taking the more difficult route. And, I don't think at the time I was thinking that it was more difficult. I think at the time I actually thought that starting my own company was the easier route because I didn't have to deal with someone in leadership that was not a good leader. Does that make sense?
100%.
Like, so I wanted to kind of flip the script and just create my own thing out of a negative situation.
Yeah. So long story short, move with intention, pivot where needed, and create a culture where people want to thrive at.
Yeah.
Or can thrive at, right?
100%. I think that's exactly it. And I feel like, especially in my world, like, I work with all creative people, and creative people are interesting, right? Because they don't want to be bogged down and have all these rules and stuff. And I think where employers in our space miss the ball. Like, I still have to, as a business owner, there's structure again, like there are rules and regulations, but within reason. You know what I mean? Like, you have to understand the kind of people in your respective industry, and in mine, Everyone's creative. So I have to be empathetic and understand like their personality types and feed into them too, right? So it's not just them feeding into this business, but like, okay, you're creative. Like, what do you like to do? What do they need space and energy and all the things that like come with being a creative person.
Do you have a new position for Brandon? He's a producer, by the way, now.
Yeah, he totally is.
New producer, producer Brandon.
Well, you know what? I see you guys every day, so I feel like you basically are employed here.
Yeah,
I do feel like we're at the front door key.
We are.
Point
Yeah,
of our relationship.
Well, we know where to go when a hurricane comes because of the storm doors. This is like the safest place in Orlando. If you're trying to rob Soliman Productions, you have no chance, by the way. So
No chance.
Don't come here. No, we do have a lot of fun though, and I think that in working with you, we've seen that creative side of you. And I think one of the more eye-opening moments for me is that when we had our previous partners that were doing business, they were great at what they did, but you just had this element of creativity to almost like you're building your business, build that brand for us and your clients. And we see that firsthand. So we come in, you kind of analyze what we do in businesses. We've helped startup companies. We've helped existing companies. Our business consulting side and what we do, a lot of people think it's just sales and leadership. We are actually more towards the business consulting side now more than anything, which is giving people direction on their brands. And that's what you do, right? Mm-hmm. We are not a marketing firm by any means. So we needed to find someone like you. When we came in, you asked us discovery questions, which we do in our business deep dives, right? We gave you the information, then you created this plan of action that was like, here's our thoughts on moving forward. And our reply to you was, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Let's do it, because what we were doing obviously isn't working, right? And I think that you could have the best product, the best service, you could offer anybody the best solution in the world. But if they don't know who you are and they can't see you, then that's a problem. And you help people become more seen. And I think that as we've seen you move with intention, like I said earlier, one of the questions I always have is, knowing we know a little bit about marketing. Okay. Could we go out there and run paid ads tomorrow? Sure. Would they be successful? Probably not. But do we know enough about it to do it? Absolutely. We know what we're good at. We know what we're not good at. How important is it for you, because you've got such a great team, to surround yourselves with people that are good at shit that you're not good at?
Yeah, I always tell my team, I'm like, look, I want to hire people that are smarter than me. Like, I know where I thrive, but I also know, it's hard for you?
How are you guys laughing?
Classic Todd special.
There's a lot that's
Hashtag
tough for you, Todd.
T-special.
There's a lot that's tough for you to comprehend.
I'm always the stupidest person in the room, but I love that though. I'm just kidding.
Like, I feel like, when I hire people, like, I want them to, like, I know where Ian excels, I know where Allison, where Orlando, where I know what their strengths are, and I want them to continue to evolve. Like, I'm not intimidated by my team by any means. Like, they make my life easier. They're supposed to make my life easier because they're smarter than me in their respective like area, right? So for me, like, being surrounded by people that are intelligent, that are hardworking, that understand, like, this is bigger than us. Like, I always tell them, I'm like, this is about like our clients. Like, we're probably a little over accommodating, and I'm okay with that, but I want that to be like the brand, the stamp that we leave for people. Like, our clients become like family, and that's intentional. That's not by accident. So having the right people on the bus is extremely important. And listen, I've made some poor hiring decisions, right? We've had people come and go that weren't a great fit, and that's okay. But I, as a leader, have to learn from that and figure out, like, okay, I made a mistake in hiring this kind of person who didn't fit the mold for whatever reason. Now it's my responsibility to make sure that, like, that doesn't happen again, right? So I think when you have that mindset as a leader, and then also when your team sees that you're being a little bit more intentional about who you bring through the doors, like, it just creates, again, that comforting environment of like, okay, we trust Sarah in her decision making, right? Like, I don't want to create an environment where people who are lacking in certain qualities are causing more work for others. And that's been an issue for us, because again, we're working with creatives and everyone comes in with their own little thing, their own little quirks. So, that's the hardest part of owning a company is the people, and making sure that you're constantly building, not just retaining your great team members, but then also bringing in new team members that are, going to be smarter than you and in their own respective way. So I didn't build this by myself, right? Like, this is very much a team effort. It continues to be a team effort. My team also keeps me honest. Like, if there's something that they think can be done better, whatever, like, they can communicate that with me, and I want them to. Because, I mean, you guys know how this is. You're operating up here and you're running 6,000 miles a second, and you sometimes miss like the very basic stuff. And the basic stuff is what smarter people, right? Like the smart people on your team can help accentuate, bring to your attention, and then it's up to you to fix it. So
it's so how I wonder if you've had issues with letting go of the reins on certain things and delegating things out, especially it being a creative process, because it comes from this experience, both for our own company and helping with a bunch of clients. We have gone through the processes of, helping with the website stuff and the creative on the website and looking at what they do creatively and what they put out into the world to make sure it's, consistent with the brand and all these things. And there's typically not like one right answer. I'll look at the site we're looking at right now for a client and I'm like, that absolutely sucks and I would never want that for my company. He looks at it and goes, dude, it's amazing. What are you talking about? And then vice versa. It happens all the time because there's a portion of it that's kind of just personal preference in the creative stuff. Mm-hmm. And I can only imagine, at least for me, and having to delegate out not just remedial tasks, but like creative stuff where you've got an opinion, maybe someone else has a different opinion, someone else has a different opinion, and then there's the client's opinion. Have you had struggles in like letting go of the reins and giving people the ability the autonomy to go and design it this way, even if it's not exactly what you would have done?
For sure. I still struggle with that. I mean, I've got a great team. They're great at what they do, but that's my passion, right? Is like the producing, the telling a story. And for sure, I mean, it's hard for me to let go of projects, right? Like I'm still very entrenched in the day-to-day production stuff. Am I as much as I used to be? Of course not, right? Like I'm busier than ever and I've got to focus on business development, but it's hard for me to let go, for sure. It's hard for me to delegate. I'm doing a better job at it just out of pure force or need, in a sense, if that makes sense. It's like the busier you get on business development, it's like, okay, what choice do I have but to delegate? And being that my team is great and they handle things so well, it's been an easier transition for me to, especially over the past, like I would say 6 months or so, it's been easier for me to be able to like put my hands up, let go. You guys handle this, just report to me on like what's going on. But I review everything. I try to be as hands-on as I can, but also for my own emotional and mental stability, have been very good at delegating. Again, as of recently, and like I said, I've been in business for almost 10 years, but as of recently, delegate some of those tasks that like I shouldn't be doing. Like, for example, I'm not writing scripts anymore. Thank God. That was tough for me to let go of because that's part of like what I actually enjoy doing is telling someone's story. I don't know the last time I wrote a script, which is like awesome. Reviewing things like captions for spelling errors and stuff like that. I don't do that anymore. Assigning tasks to our editing team. I don't do that anymore, probably for the best interest of everybody because I'm so busy and it's hard for me to get back to everybody. So I've definitely let go in a lot of ways, but I do still struggle with it. And I think I always will. Yeah. The moment that I feel like, I'm just going to delegate everything is a problem because I feel like then my passion for this business is maybe not where it needs to be anymore. Mm-hmm. Like you always have to feel a sense of, okay, what's going on here? What's going on there? What can I do to improve this myself? Or what can I do? Like I want my team to feel that for me because I don't want them to ever think that I'm lax because the moment that I'm more lax, then they are too about their own work. Right. So like, I always want to feel that sense of pressure and having to be involved in a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit. So, love that. Love everything we're talking about so far. But I don't know if anybody's noticed, but you have this big rock on your finger.
Oh,
And,
this old thing?
Oh, that old thing. Yeah,
This little
100%. Yeah,
guy
just
right here?
about
Yeah.
87 Mazda on one hand. That's what it looks like. Love that.
Yeah.
The thing is that you've been so independent and successful for so many years. And you are partnered with an amazing human that we know in Sanjay, who is also very successful as well. And I think a lot of times being a successful independent woman, and if I'm being very transparent, I think they kind of get this like huge shadow over them if like the male is like succeeding and then the women are like, hey, I'm over here, I did this too. There's sometimes is like prejudgment, right? It's like, oh, especially when you marry into success, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, she's just marrying this guy for his money or whatever. And I know that, everybody that knows you knows that you've built a lot of this with yourself and your amazing team here before having a partner, right? Mm-hmm. And it's important for you. And I know that because we've talked about it in the past, because I think there's a stigma and there's like this judgment instantly when, you happen to marry someone that's successful, and especially on the woman's side, how has that affected you in not only like previously independent, because before when you're by yourself, it's like, oh, she's doing it on her own, right? And then all of a sudden it's like people are like, well, is Sarah struggling because she's now, getting married to this rich guy, right? Or whatever, this other successful guy. Mm-hmm. And all these stigmas and judgments come in for, well, we know you very well. We know none of that's true and that you're successful with or without anybody by your side. But how has that affected you in your relationship? And like, you have such a great partner. Sanjay is such an amazing human being. And we know the element, know how close you guys are, but as a woman in business, marrying into someone like Sanjay, who is basically the mayor of Orlando, knows everybody and whatever. How has that been for you?
That's such a good...
It's not too personal of a question.
No,
Sorry.
listen,
Yeah.
I'm an open book. I love talking about this stuff, and I think it's important to talk about this stuff, especially as a woman in business who's built my own path, and now here I am. So I actually wanted this for myself, and I'll give you a little bit of background of my story, because I know maybe whoever's watching this doesn't know my background. So I was actually previously married for a short period of time. I was married for 3.5 years or so, not a long time. Great human being, nothing bad to say about my ex. Like we're on very good terms, but we're just two very different people. And our paths in life were and are very different as well. What do I mean by that? I've always been a hustler, go-getter. I've always stood on my own 2 feet, worked really hard for everything I have. I was building my business. I've built my business on my own. And my former partner was a little bit more, he was okay with kind of like living a certain life. And he would even say to me, you need a partner that can give you more. And I always thought going into a marriage like, oh, it's okay if I like make more money or whatever. But, as much as I am like this independent woman, I understood through going through my own like personal relationships and my divorce that I actually am more traditional in a lot of ways as a woman. And I'm okay with being with someone that thrives more than I do. I'm okay with that. I realized that I wanted that for myself, and here's why. As a woman, unfortunately, in a lot of instances, when you make more money than your husband or your partner, and this isn't for necessarily every single person, right? I don't want to stereotype by any means, but my experience has been it lends itself to a little bit of a battle in your home. My ex was always super supportive of me and like whatever I've built, but I started to realize like, okay, he was a business owner too. And I couldn't really come home and share like, oh, I just closed a really big contract, or I just did this, or I started to censor myself because I felt like it was causing more tension than good, right? Like that cheerleader in him became a little bit more silent. And in that process, I realized like, okay, I want something a little bit different. So it's interesting with Sanjay, who is now my fiance, that I kind of manifested him. We always say like, I literally manifested him. I got divorced and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to stay single. Like I'm good with being the chick at the airport with my beer and my laptop open. Like, let's go. I'm good with that, But in manifesting someone, I remember telling my mom and my friends, I'm like, I want someone who's older than me because I'm mature for my age. And then I want someone that's more successful than me, that can, that's established, that has a home, a car, whatever, like all the things that like I don't need to worry about. Right. And in finding Sanjay, I'm like, wow, he's exactly that. But in return, I also wanted my partner to fully support my endeavors and my goals and make sure that he was truly my advocate and my partner, right? Like the term partner in life. Find my equal. And Sanjay is literally my equal. When you ask me about like, do I feel overshadowed or what? No, because he doesn't put me in a situation or make me feel like I'm ever overshadowed. He knows a lot of people. You know, he's very successful. He grew up here, so he literally is like the mayor of Orlando, and I'm okay with that. I love that for him. I'm not intimidated by that, and in fact, in joining forces together, him and we've been able to build a really beautiful power couple brand together, and we help each other out in business. You know, I sell for him, he'll sell for me. Like, we really support each other. And he has never dimmed my light in any way, nor would he allow others to. In fact, it's adorable. Like, every time we go somewhere and we meet someone, he's like, oh, this is my fiance, Sarah. She's the CEO of Soliman Productions. I'm like, babe, they have no idea what the hell Soliman Productions is. But the way he speaks about it is so big, you know? And it's just like, how can I be overshadowed in that scenario? I think it also helps too that, you know, I'm a very type A plus person. And he allows me to be myself. He's never been like, babe, you were like way too much at dinner, or like you know, he just lets me be me, and he's not embarrassed by me. He's so proud of me, and vice versa. I'm so proud of him. So I think when you have that mutual respect for one another as partners, like there isn't any of that like overshadow or whatever. Now, whatever people's perception is none of my business, right? Like that's never something in my world that I've worried about. Like, I don't have time to worry about people's how they perceive me. Like, oh, she's now with Sanjay. What is that? Like, I don't worry about that because my work speaks for itself, right? Okay. So, yeah, it's been an awesome few years. Like, just kind of, it's so interesting, like how your life can shift when you again are intentional about what you want out of your life, whether it's for your business or for your partner. And that's what I feel like I've been doing over the past few years is really manifesting, and it's happened. I'm manifesting not like just, you know, praying to God that this happens, but I'm also working towards it. I'm doing the right things that have led me to this very moment in my life, which is what I've always pictured for myself. It just took me a few, you know, detours and bumps and all the things, hurricanes, tornadoes, the whole nine to get here, you know.
We've all been there.
How'd you guys meet?
So speaking of intention, when I got divorced, there was a new spot at the time called the London House, which is an exclusive, like member only place, right?
Speed dating zone. Got it.
Basically. Yeah, no, it's not. But I was like, what the heck is this place? And I learned about it. And then I'm like, okay, it's a little bit of a hefty membership fee, but I made it my divorce gift to myself, which I know sounds super ridiculous, but it just was. Instead of a Chanel purse, I figured I'd invest in the London House. And my goal with that was just to be surrounded by like-minded people, right? People, women and men in business. Like, I had no intention on meeting my life partner there in any capacity. Fast forward after a few months, I'm there with a client of mine, and he's there with, you know, some buddies, and we're both having dinner separately. And the bartender, out of all people, Drew, who we call our Cupid, he said to me, Sarah, have you met Sanjay? He's a member here too. And I'm like, no, who the heck is Sanjay? I think I'm like the only human in Orlando that like didn't know who the hell Sanjay was at the time. And he said, well, you guys should meet, you know, you're both members, blah, blah, blah. So we met, and it was kind of like instant. Like, we were both like, this is weird. And he was going through a divorce too. And from there, we've literally been inseparable since the London House. So I tell him he was my best ROI, return on investment, for those that are, yeah.
I
love that.
Agrees.
That's awesome.
Agrees. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, we use the phrase power couple a lot. You know, it seems like it's used very often these days, but you guys really are. Sanjay's great. You're phenomenal. I just wanted to kind of talk about that because, look, Brandon and I have talked about it, and anytime we do these things, we wanted to have more women, obviously with help with your guidance as well too, because I think, you know, I watched this podcast the other day, and this girl was talking to all other women, and these women were like, well, we need to be, women strong together and women lead the world. And I was just like, yeah, good. And I kept listening to it. And this girl goes, well, you guys do know that, men still run 86% of all businesses in the United States. The CEOs, roles, like it's okay to kind of not be this women strong thing. It can be we strong. And I feel like it is we strong with you and Sanjay, and I think it's good but as a woman, I just wanted people to know, like, it's, you don't, number one, have to care about people's opinions. And I kind of wanted your insight on this. One of the last guests we had on the show, we were talking about like haters and their thoughts and, how you use them, whereas I'm like, it builds me when I have people that say I can't do something, or I have people that say, you can't write a book, and, you can't do this, and you can't build a business, you can't do this. And, Sanjay asked me, when we were in Vegas together, it was just him and I talking. He said, what college did you go to? And I said, well, I didn't. And he goes, what do you mean you didn't? He's like, you didn't go to school? And he was like shocked. You know what I mean? I didn't go to school. I said, no. I said, depends on what you mean by school. But like my school is a little different than yours, right? And we kind of talked a lot about this over my school in the streets, where I had the luxury of working with Brandon, who did go to college and does have the degree and all the dots, right? And I have none. I think that like as we, grow into these roles, people really they used to look at the dots. You have your doctorate, do you have your master's, do you have a degree in this? And nowadays it's not so much, right? Nowadays it's kind of like, you have to prove who you are as a person, as a business. And it doesn't matter how well you do. It always seems like someone's got something to say. And even you guiding my daughter Avery through her podcast, who's recently had this, had her moment where, you told her people are going to say good things and bad things, some people dismiss it. Like Brandon's like, I don't even think about it. It doesn't even bother him at all. Like not one bit. I don't say it bothers me. I say that it motivates me. It really pushes me. And it's really been the catalyst to me thriving and having the success that I've had. So in your like mind, personally, not anybody else, not Sanjay, not your business, whatever. Like when you have haters that constantly, make comments, because there are people that are going to throw shade the rest of your life, as well as all of us. It's going to happen, right? How do you deal with it? Does it motivate you, or do you just push it to the side like it doesn't even bother you?
So I'm kind of in between you guys. Like I feel like I don't use it necessarily to fuel me more. But I'm really good at dismissing it too. So I just see it as like PR. I'm like, thanks for being my extended marketing team. I really appreciate it, right? So if people are talking about you, whether it's good or bad, at the end of the day, people are going to come back and analyze the person that you are. And when they see that you're the one that's like really, like your character's strong, your brand is strong, your integrity is strong, like then they look at the other folks that are speaking negatively about you and they're like, okay, like we see the difference here. And actually this happened to me early on in my business when I did leave my former employer, and they became my best PR because they would talk so negatively about me and try to threaten and corner me and, through other people. And when someone would call me and try to get the scoop from me, I'm like, I wish them well. Like, I don't have anything bad to say about them. It just didn't work out. Right. So then when that happens, people are like, okay, let me analyze what happened here with my conversation with these people. And then when I spoke to Sarah, two completely different individuals. Which one are you going to agree with? Like, which one are you going to understand that's like classier in their approach, right? So for me, like I don't thrive off of haters. I don't want to say that. I mean, I don't care if people don't like me, right? I'm not going to invest any energy in that space. I just view it as PR, because if people go back to like my brand, if they Google me, if they whatever, like it speaks for itself. I've worked really hard to establish a credible brand that is respected across my industry. So I don't worry about people not liking me personally, what I do, what I wear, what I say. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah,
like
I think that for me, I don't really care about what anybody thinks about me personally.
But it fuels you to do more.
What it does is it fuels me. Like, I don't care about anybody's opinion of me.
Yeah.
Right? People are going to have opinions. Everybody has an opinion. I think for me, though, I'm very competitive. Obviously, right? And I love competition, and I like doing things. And I think that was a lot about how I was raised too. I think the way I was raised, in the environment that I was raised in, people expected me to lose, right? And there was no chance that, Todd said, I've literally had people tell me when I was younger that you're just going to be a victim of your circumstances. This is the environment you're in. Just accept it and move forward. I've literally had people tell me that growing up. And I just, and then I saw through, friends and very close family, immediate, if you will, the lack of success due to the opinions of others. And I think for me, it was something so young in me that I was just like, you know what, I don't let them bother me personally as a human being because I don't care if they like me or not. But it's almost like I live to prove these people wrong.
You
and
turned
other
it into
people
a
just
positive.
don't care, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay. But I do turn it into positive.
Yeah.
So it's not like if Brandon wasn't my friend and Brandon was talking trash, I knew Brandon from someone else, that I was like, oh God, I'm so offended that Brandon doesn't like me. I could give one shit.
Yeah.
What I want to do is I want Brandon eventually to go, damn, I talked all that shit and nothing still stopped this guy. And it's happened my entire life.
Yeah.
Because I've had failures and I've made mistakes and I've done the wrong thing. And we've all gone through those things. But I think, again, the good is so far outweighed the bad and the success in my life that people eventually, and that's that old cliche thing that there's like, oh, first they're your haters and then they're your followers, right? I don't like that either. It's like, I don't care if you're my hater or you're not, but I just want to prove to these people that they are capable of doing more.
Yeah.
And then if they put their best foot forward and not talk as much shit, because to me, if you can turn a hater around, not as a follower, not as someone that supports me, but in believing that they're capable of doing it themselves, that's the ultimate win for me. There's no in between.
Sure.
So like, that's kind of how I look at it. I don't really care about their opinions. I want people to win. I want the haters to win. I want the people that love me to win. I want to prove to them that nothing can stop you as long as you're moving towards it.
Yeah, you're a role model for people that face adversity. So my takeaway from that would be, okay, if I'm looking at Todd and people like haters or whatever, right? Like his haters, my haters, your hate, whatever, then it's like, I want to view my haters and like fuel me to do better and be a role model for people that face adversity instead of fighting back and instead of
people let them bring them down.
Yes,
that's the problem.
Yes. You know what? I mean? Here's my parents have always, my dad especially has always told me this, and it sounds a lot better in Arabic because we're Egyptian and that's what we speak at home. But he says, when dogs bark, you don't bark back. And it's so interesting. And he told me that early on in my business. And that's why I've always had that mindset of like, okay, yeah, like you guys can keep talking over here. I'm going to keep thriving. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, but I'm not going to bark back. Right. And that stuck with me, and it sticks with me obviously to this day. So if there is someone that is not a fan, that's okay. Like I'm not for everybody and I'm okay with that. Am I going to bark back at them? No. Right. Like you have every right to not like me or what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But I do kind of the same thing we're saying, but we just do it a little differently, is that like, I want people to see that when you don't bark back, your energy is used in so much more of a positive way and you continue to build from. Amen. So that's kind of like, that's what you're saying basically, is like, you're not concerned about what they think about you, but it does fuel you to just keep going, right? And like 100%. Keep doing what you're doing, because obviously what you're doing is working. Yeah. So, and unfortunately, we live in a world where not everybody wants to see you win. When people are doing really well, sometimes other people are like, oh, okay, like that's not fair. Why did she get successful? Why does she drive this car? Why does she? Because I freaking worked damn hard for it. That's why. And I'm not paying attention to people like you that are talking. I'm busy over here talking numbers and talking big deals with people, not in this petty stuff, right? So your energy and where you focus it is like a make or break situation if you're going to be a business owner or if you are a business owner. Like you just can't live in the small stuff. Amen. So
you mentioned the woman empowerment thing, which obviously we all love, but I'm curious in this one, and here's the reason I ask, is because, and maybe actually now that I'm going to say this out loud, maybe that means I'm sexist. We're about to find out. So
okay, let me roll up my sleeves.
Funny enough, in this specific industry, you doing what you do.
Yeah.
And this is just for me. I can't speak for anyone else. If I have the choice of two companies and it looks like they do, all else is equal. They do a similar good job and all that kind of stuff. I would rather work with a woman for this thing, because I know that there's going to be times where we need a woman's eye and a woman's perspective that Todd and I do not have. Sure, we can get our wives' opinions and stuff, but someone that's in charge of doing this thing for us in our business, I think the woman's perspective is way more valuable than anything else. And arguably, I think more women are more often to be great creatives than even men. I could be wrong on that. I don't know. It's just my opinion.
Even more than you?
But I didn't say everyone.
Yeah, I agree. That's all right. I was just
So,
making
you know, that's just the way I feel.
Sure.
Obviously, that would be an advantage for you, not a disadvantage being a woman and building a business, stuff like that. But I'm curious if you've experienced, you know, hardships or disadvantages growing your business because you're a woman, or has it on the flip side actually helped, or is it kind of indifferent?
I always face adversity. I mean, so we have different like parts of our business, right? Like the element where we work with you guys having like more of a woman's touch, where it's like we're looking at all the things that like men kind of miss, right? Like that's
Like
the
my black
marketing
shirts?
side. Yeah. Like black shirts, like
Brandon wanted all male guests.
yeah, right. Like things like that where I
Sexist.
took a look at your
100%.
page and I was like, okay, we need to have some women on your page. Like this is crazy, you know? Like so a woman's like thought process for sure. I think from a marketing standpoint, not to say men are bad at it by any means, like some of the most brilliant marketers are men, but I feel like, you know, I get what you're saying when it comes to that, because our eye is always going to be different aesthetically for sure. But there's other elements of my business where it's very male dominated. So we do audiovisual AV for short, right? Which is like the screens, the projectors, like all the production stuff that's very like manly. So when I walk into a meeting and I'm trying to pitch AV clients on, but like using us to handle their full-fledged production of their events, they're like, you know, they're kind of like, oh, are you the little marketing girl? Are you the I'm like, no, like this is my company. I invested a lot of money into the equipment that we own now and all this like, so I've had to, and I still have to definitely work a lot harder and prove myself a little bit more in those ways. Like I have to kind of like share my history versus like a man walking into the room who also owns AV equipment and has an AV company gets the job, right? Because it just seems like a man would be better in that role or for that kind of service. So yeah, I mean, it's always a struggle. I serve on boards where I'm usually the youngest and also one of very few women that are my age and also minority. And that's always very interesting because I'm vocal. So, and I also dress a certain way where I'm not like in my, you know, suit kind of thing walking in. Like I wear dresses, I wear skirts, I wear things that like, you know, can come off like, oh, is she just like a ditz that's like, she kind of like made her way here? Like who did she sleep with to get here kind of thing, you know? Yeah. And I always have to fight against that. And it's so interesting because I get those eyes when I walk into a room like, okay, you know, I've got like my red bottoms on and my Louis Vuitton bag and all the things. So I come off to, unfortunately, some people like I'm either snobby or maybe ditzy or, oh, how did she get here? But when I start to speak, they're like, you know, and that's where I earn my place. And that's unfortunate. And it's unfortunate for so many women that have to speak a certain way and conduct themselves in a certain way in order to earn their spot. Whereas for men, you know, like you could just like, there's a lot of things that you could do very differently. Like I was talking about this last night with someone. The mistake, like you can make the same exact mistake that I make and it'll be reflected very differently. I'll be talked about. It'll kind of stay with me a lot longer and I will have to course correct in a lot of different ways where you don't have to. And that's where I'm never one to be like, oh, I'm a woman, poor me. That's not my style at all. It never has been. But I do recognize the realities that women in business have to face, which are very different than men. And that will forever be the case. And that's our reality, right? I could either sit here and cry about it. We could all, as women, sit here and cry about it, or we could just rise above it, as we were just talking about, and just know that we're not going to sit here and change society overnight. Hopefully our daughters or granddaughters and their kids will have a different kind of conversation one day. But for now, this is reality. And I'm okay with it. You just have to be, it's made me a better business owner. And it's made me really emotionally intelligent because I can read the room in 2.5 seconds. Yeah. I'm like, oh, this guy's going to have an issue with me. This woman's going to have an issue with me. This person really takes well to me. How do I get these two to buy in? Right? So when we're talking like sales and stuff, I'm constantly reading the room and having to bob and weave through these personalities and how they perceive me. And once the perception wears off, then we can have a actual intellectual conversation. So
Yeah, I
That's
think.
cool.
I'm sorry. You gonna say something?
No, I was just gonna say, you know, I obviously haven't had anything that's been harder because I'm a man, I don't think. But the closest thing I could get to understanding, even close to it, is like when I got my first like real job out of college, I was like 22 or 23, and I worked for this big fancy healthcare IT company, and I had to get in a suit and go to hospitals and literally sit in boardrooms with, these physicians that are making $20 million a year in these massive healthcare organizations, and guys that have all the dots and the MDs and all the stuff. And I look like I'm 12, like legit. I didn't have any of this scruff shit to make me look like a real adult or anything. And I was just out of college, and they know I'm just out of college. The average age of the room is 65 years old. They've been working longer than I've been alive. And I can read the room in a heartbeat, and they're like, who the fuck is this kid? He has no idea what he's doing. And I have to sit there and tell them that how you're currently doing bedside care, you could be doing it like this, and to do it this way, you need to buy this thing, and it's $30 million.
Yeah.
And I look like I'm a 12-year-old. I'm like younger than their grandkids, right? So instantly I had to figure out like, oh shit, I'm not going to walk into this room and there is no assumed respect. I'm going to have to earn this thing right from the rip. And that, maybe not the hater thing, but like that I saw as a challenge. I'm like, okay, like I get it. If I'm them, I don't blame them for the way they feel, because there's some logic to it. I get it, but it just makes it more of a challenge for me to earn their respect faster. And at the end, I'm like, see, motherfucker, I told you I'm smart. I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's as close to where
and it
I've
builds
gotten
your
in that scenario.
confidence. I think when you're faced with adversities like that, that's a great example. And I appreciate that being like a relatable thing, right? Like you get it. Because we've all been there. We've all been young at some point and walked into a room, man, woman, whatever, and have had to prove ourselves. But I feel like every time you have to prove yourself in that situation, like a situation like that, you walk out feeling so much more confident. Because you're like, wow, if I just went through that, like I can go through this again and again and again. And then you get really freaking good at proving yourself.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I was going to say before Brandon was, we talk, you're talking about, I hope it's different for our kids and our grandkids, or it's not going to be. I solely believe that. That's my opinion. I think that there's always going to be judgment. There's always going to be stigmas. It doesn't matter if you're a woman, if you're, a male. I have walked into rooms with people that are worth 9 figures and telling them how to do their business looking like this. And see what, you guys don't realize is that when I have tattoos all over my body and everywhere, that was a choice I made, and I have to live with that choice. And that choice in business and coming up, and I'm older than both of you guys, but as I was coming up, was a very difficult one, because tattoos a long time ago were definitely not something that people looked at as a good thing. It wasn't normal. And I had tattoos, a lot of them, in a time where it wasn't, and you were prejudged. How can you know business if you have tattoos? How could you try to help us and our company grow if you have tattoos? I would sit down and, if I had my long sleeves, if they didn't cover up all my tattoos, I could see people look at me and like double take, right? Is that tattoos, right, on his arm? And the prejudgment's there. So, I understand the women in business struggles. I understand that there's men struggles. I understand it all. I think that we all have struggles, and I don't think weighing it out as anything that we're doing today. I think that, to me, to say one person based on a gender or tattoos or age or whatever is harder on another would not only be a lack of empathy for these people that are going through what they're going through, but we are not these people. Like, we talk about it all the time. Like, there are kids that have tons of money, and then there are kids that don't. And the kids that go, oh, silver spoon in his mouth, best life ever, drives a BMW, probably has a new PlayStation, has all this stuff. But deep down inside, that kid has a father who's never home and cries himself to sleep because he hasn't had a father figure, and he's hurting so hard that we don't know.
Yep.
And I use that story because it's a common one, and one that happened really recently at a speaking event that I was at. And I remember the kid coming up to me once they found out a little bit more about the other kid that was rich, getting prejudged, and he says, I was wrong and you were right. I said, it's not about being right. I said that you don't know how the struggles that people go through affect them as an individual. And who are we to judge the weight? Oh, I'm a woman, so I have more problems. Or I'm a man, I have more problems. Or I have tattoos on my problem, so you don't know what that feels like, Brandon, because you haven't gone into a boardroom with tattoos. That's all bullshit. How it affects you as a person, and I don't mean any offense to this at all, to anyone, to women, men, anybody. When you go through something, that weight is your weight. It's how you feel as a person. And no matter if it's very little, because to me, I'm like, okay, so your dad wasn't around. You know what I mean? Suck it up, right? Maybe it doesn't affect me that way. But maybe that person, it affects them. It's the hardest thing they've ever gone through. In business, to me, it's very similar as in life. Because when I would go into rooms and people would instantly look at me, you're absolutely right. The proven point, which sounds like you're a little bit more swaying towards that when someone like, look, you as a 22-year-old kid had to prove yourself. That to me is like, been my entire life from not having money to tattoos, etc. And you're right, it's built me to be the individual that I am today. It's not only am I stronger, but it forced me to learn more about business, to know more about business than most do, to be the best sales professional and trainer, and to be the best leader, and to pour into people the way that I pour into because of what I've gone through. So those struggles and that adversity and the people that you have to prove yourself, people say, I shouldn't have to prove myself. Yes, you should. You absolutely should. A resume is a piece of paper that doesn't mean shit. There's stats out there that say that people that look at resumes, they don't even fact check your resume. So if I wore a suit and I look like $1 million, I could say I went to Harvard. They're not going to fact check it. 99% of them are not going to fact check it. So I always say your life is your resume. You can come up to me and tell me how amazing you are and you've done this and you've done that and I have this accomplishment. Look at all these awards and look what I've done over here. I don't care about any of that. I want to know who you are as a person and how you're going to prove to me that everything you told me you're good at is something that you're actually good at.
Yep.
That's what matters. So I think that proving yourselves to others is something that everybody should do. They should always have to do it. And if you walk into a room where you feel like you don't have to prove yourself to someone because of your accolades, then you're now starting to get to a level you don't want to get to, right? You always want to be ahead of the game in my world. You always want to be ahead of the game. You want to be able to be at your best possible performance at all times and prove to people that I am the right choice to do business with. I'm the right choice to hire. I'm the right choice to build a business with. You don't want to choose anybody else, and I'm going to prove that to you. We have this money back guarantee thing. It's 100%. It's your opinion money back guarantee. It's like if you do business with us and we crushed a deep dive, you gave us 30 grand for a weekend to come in there for 2 days to do business with you, and you said, we're going to give your money back. Why? Because we don't give a shit. We want to prove ourselves, and we thank God, knock on wood, we haven't had to do it yet. But if we did, I'd be like, okay, fine, here's your money, right? Because I want people to know that we're okay proving what we're capable of in every aspect. And if you run a business, you have to do that every single day.
Yeah.
And that's I'm never going to change for that.
Yeah. You should not want it easy, right? Like I know that nothing's going to be easy for me. Like literally every day I'm like, I might as well be a firefighter, right? Like I'm constantly putting fires out. There's nothing that's easy. And I don't want it to be easy because the moment it is easy, I'm like, oh shit, like what's going on here? Because I know that a competitor is constantly having the hard stuff, right? Having to prove themselves, having to work hard. Like I want to constantly be able to prove to people. And it's a good feeling when you prove yourself to someone and they end up working with you forever, right? Like we have clients that we've retained for 10 years now. Why? Because every year we prove ourselves to those clients that are kind of grandfathered in. I know I don't probably have to do as much for them as I used to, right? Like as far as like me showing up, me being there, me shaking hands, me.
Free photo shoots we don't get, right, B?
100%.
Maybe one day, we'll see. But like there was those like long-term clients where in the first year, 2-3 years, I was like, holy shit, like I really need to like prove myself. Well, guess what? I'm still proving myself to them because they could take their contract elsewhere. Just because they know the kind of work that we do and they know that we are going to show up and execute is not enough. Like they need to know that we still care. And proving yourself means you care, right? It's like what I was saying earlier with the delegating. I don't want to just be like, oh, thank God I like have less to do today. No, like I want to feel that pressure because the moment I don't, then my passion is in question. Like I need to check myself and ask myself if this is something that I actually want to do. And whether you're in business or, to your point, applying for a job, applying for a position, you need to show up and really prove yourself. Like I was at a board meeting with, I sit on a board with Full Sail, a school here in Central Florida. And, we hire kids out of there. And I asked the counselors, I said, can you just explain to me like how you keep it real with these kids when they come out of school and they're sitting now in an interview with me or another employer and they want all this money starting out because they're entitled to it? Who's teaching them this crap? Yeah. Where is that level of like, I'm going to work for it. I'm going to really hustle and prove myself to my employer and earn that, right? Like what happened to that mentality? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think, if your focus is always on bringing your best self and knowing that your best self is always going to improve and evolve and change as it should, then you're constantly going to be in this kind of rat race of proving yourself. And
it keeps you learning too.
It does. Yeah. And it keeps you sharp. Like I feel sharp every day. Yeah. When you guys challenge me, when other clients challenge me, I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe we could have done that better. Maybe we could do this differently. Maybe we could, like, I want that. Like I don't want to feel like I know everything. That's boring. That's a terrible way to live.
Amen. Yeah, we'll close it up.
So for the other just question, for anyone that maybe there's people that have been exactly where you were. I hated the job. I've been getting validation. People think I'm the business owner. I want to go start my thing, but I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and no one ever does, right? But aside from the mindset type of stuff and the conceptual type of stuff, but more in the tactical type of things, what advice would you give them to get to the next step in growing a successful business that's a little bit more like tactical business stuff that helped you get from, starting at zero to wherever you are now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So tactical, I would say the first thing that I would do is ask questions in your circle, right? Like ask whatever your support group looks like, whether it's your family, friend, spouse, whatever it is, ask them what it would be like for you to own a business. Like, do they perceive you as a business owner? What strengths and what weaknesses do they see in you? And be receptive to that feedback. I think your support group should be the people that are brutally honest with you, and give you that advice of where they feel like you can improve. Like, for example, if you are someone who sleeps in, and you don't hold yourself accountable to wake up early and really like get your day started, well, maybe that's not the best quality to have if you want to start a business, right? So maybe your spouse, your parent, whatever, can keep it real with you and say, okay, honey, it's time for you to like set your alarm a little earlier. And, so like take that feedback. That would be the first thing that I would do. The second thing is along the same lines is build a support community through mentors, right? So you're never going to do things well in life alone. So I know, Todd, you talk about this a lot, having a mentor, someone who can give you advice, someone that you admire, that maybe isn't in your industry, but someone that you just admire. They've made it in business and you're watching their daily moves on social media, or, you're influenced by them. What have they done to really get to that level? Have conversations with them, ask questions. Then I would say more of like the logistical things, obviously applying for, business, LLC, whatever, getting your bank account set up, making sure that you have a proper, accountant or someone that can really advise you when it comes to your accounting, because that's where business owners oftentimes fail, is like you're making money, but your receivables, like who's collecting, who's doing, like have a game plan in place, some sort of a business plan. It doesn't have to be super detailed, but just to kind of outline like, okay, this is going to be my go-to person for finances. This is going to be my go-to person for marketing if you're not doing it yourself. And then, just from there, start building your portfolio in whatever industry you're in. So if you're in production, marketing, whatever, content marketing, well, you're going to have to maybe do a couple projects for free $99. That's okay. Get that established. Have visuals to showcase to others of your brand and what you can offer to them. So those are the things that I would say are more tactical, that are your to-do list. And if you don't have a to-do list, you should definitely start one. You don't just wake up one day and get successful in business. So taking these steps and always asking questions, I think, is like my main piece of advice for people in whatever journey you're at in your life. And if you are a successful business owner, don't get too arrogant, right? Life happens to people, unfortunately, and you never know what tomorrow can bring. Don't operate in a space of arrogance. Like, always stay humble and continue to also ask questions when you're operating up here too.
Yeah, so full circle is move with intention, as we talked about earlier. Pivot where needed and surround yourselves with good people, and you have an opportunity to have a thriving business and thriving life, I'm guessing, right?
Yep.
I just want to figure out what it's going to take to get us to free 99, right?
399 is the spot.
That ship has sailed, gentlemen.
Maybe a dinner invite because we heard about a lot of bottles of wine. that
We
she has
did.
in her
I don't
house.
understand. There's a
Yeah.
lot of it.
They're all
And-
gone.
I haven't been able to pop those bottles
And
yet.
technically, they're
all gone.
because they're not all the family. Because she said she thought they were all family. They're not, right?
100%.
We
Yeah.
should drink.
And a compliment for you because I know you love my compliments.
I do.
Here's a
Once
story.
is fantastic.
Summertime at a pool, bunch of people hanging out drinking. 2 grandpas at the pool. One with tattoos, one without. The one with tattoos is always cooler.
That's so true. All the grandpas. You're but he's still a grandpa.
See what you took out of that?
I did. Thank you. Well, listen, thank you so much for doing this. We love you. You know that. Obviously, we want to be one of these partners of yours that's going to be here for the next 10 years. You guys should definitely, if you don't know Sarah, follow her company, Soliman Productions, it's Sarah Soliman, all the cool stuff. And we're so grateful for you and your time today. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate the conversation, and thank you for trusting us to help you grow your business.
Well,
So.
if we don't grow, we're just going to fire you.
Yeah.
See you guys next time.
No pressure.